Hi, everyone. We are here to go over our debate over collaboration with other professionals. Here with Tara Danahy, Callie McLeod, Akia Tabor, Cassidy Moss, and Taylor Albright.
According to the U.S. Department of Education, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, or EHA, is a federal law that was enacted in 1975. This law aims towards meeting the individual needs of, protecting the rights of, and improving the results for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities, as well as their families, both locally and from state to state. Since being enacted in 1975, this law's name was changed to the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, in 2004 during a reauthorization. Sadly, prior to the enactment of IDEA, only 1 in 5 children with disabilities in the U.S. were educated by the public school system. Some states had laws specifically excluding children with disabilities from the classroom, including children who were emotionally disturbed, blind, deaf, or had intellectual disabilities. However, since the law was set in place, there have been many advancements in the services provided to children with disabilities and their families, such as early intervention services for infants and toddlers, special education services in the school system, as well as additional programs. Additional achievements that can be directly linked to IDEA include children with disabilities being educated in their public school systems as opposed to private institutions, and individuals with disabilities graduating at a higher rate, attending post secondary schools, and gaining employment post graduation. What is FAPE? According to the U.S. Department of Education, FAPE is an acronym that stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. This act was established in 1975 by President Gerald Ford. It's a law that requires school districts to provide each qualified person with a disability access to free public education no matter how severe their disabilities. An individual qualifies to receive these services if they have a documented disability that limits one or more major life activities. If a student qualifies for IDEA, then they automatically qualify for FAPE as well. An appropriate education is defined as one that meets the individual needs of the disabled student as well as the needs for the non disabled student. This may include the student being in typical classes, such as special education classes, receiving OT, PT, speech therapy, having an aide with them while they're in class, etc. This law allows the parent or guardian of the student to review their records, receive notices on their progress, and even challenge evaluation of placement decisions. This is just a simple visual that breaks down what FAPE stands for and explains each component. F stands for free, meaning the government pays for the education of students with disabilities. A stands for appropriate. The children who qualify receive individualized IEPs. P stands for public, meaning the education is supervised by the public. This includes teachers, parents, therapists, etc. And E stands for education. The plan includes education as well as other services. This could include speech, OT, counseling, PT, transportation, etc. This
According to the BACB Code of Ethics, the most applicable code for collaborating with other professionals would be 3.06, consulting with other providers, which reads that behavioral analysts arrange for appropriate consultation with and referrals to other providers to the best interest of the clients, with appropriate informed consent and in compliance with applicable requirements, so laws, regulations, contracts, organization, and funder policies. This ethic code specifies and specifically outlines the appropriateness of collaborating with other professionals for the benefit of their client. It states that informed consent must be obtained as well as any other regulations of applicable requirements to be satisfied.
In the Broadhead article, Matthew Broadhead addresses working with other disciplinaries and maintaining those relationships and how they will benefit the individuals with autism spectrum disorder that they are collaborating for. Matthew Broadhead created a visual for assessing non-behavioral treatments. He addressed the fact that if a behavioral analyst continually challenges and questions the non-behavioral treatments that other disciplines suggest, then it could potentially damage those relationships, which would ultimately impede the treatment of the client. This visual allows the behavior analyst a clear outline of when to address a non-behavioral treatment and when not to by asking specific questions and providing a decision based on the relevance and well-being of the client. This is the visual that was mentioned in the previous slide. Matthew Broadhead created this visual to assist in ethical decision-making for behavior analysts when collaborating with other professionals. This tree creates a visual representation of how behavior analysts may decide for or against a recommended treatment by other professionals outside of the field of ABA.
Hello, my name is Sarah Danahy, and I will be discussing the pros for collaboration with other professionals. I'll be talking about well-rounded treatment. So the majority of this all comes back to Bear, Wolf, and Risley, 1968. If a behavioral analyst is acting and making decisions based on these fundamental reasons that make up a good behavioral analyst, then they are complying with the ethics code. For example, a behavior analytic intervention is applied if the target behaviors are socially important to the client, and it is effective if the results are actually useful and is supported by the client's individual values within decision-making process. An intervention is analytic if it demonstrates environmental control of the behavior change through ongoing monitoring. Interventions also need to be technological and conceptually systematic by the behavioral analyst making decisions based on ongoing research. But this can't be mistaken for having all of the answers to every part of the individuals we serve. We also need to remember to work within our scope of competence. The ethical principle of competence implies that behavioral analyst maintains high levels of competence and recognize the limits of their competence, but also continually seek to improve their competence. The ethical principle of justice specifies that each individual is entitled to equal access to the benefits from services and resources that are available to them. This also includes other fields of practice outside of ABA. Ethical decision-making is the process an analyst goes through and evaluates available response options concerning the guiding ethical principles and ethic codes. Contreras 2022 explains that evidence-based practices of ABA is a nuanced approach to behavioral problem solving that is relevant to all clinical practices rather than a restricted set of procedures. The restricted definition of evidence-based practice fails to recognize the role of the behavioral analyst and the client in determining interventions and treatment targets. Behavioral analysts who consider client values and available evidence before expressing their professional opinions can be more successful in collaborative settings. Many other professionals that behavioral analysts typically engage with already use evidence-based practices within their profession. This is important because during collaborative settings, each professional can describe their decision-making process in terms of being the best available evidence consistent with the client's values and clinical expertise. When considering a treatment recommended by another professional, the first thing that I would take into consideration is, would it be harmful to implement, or will this treatment negatively impact other treatment packages that are already in place? If the answer is no, then I would consider the social validity of such treatment. Contreras 2022 highlight 3 questions to answer this. The first being, is the goal socially significant? The behavior change must be socially significant to the client and the stakeholders. Second, are the procedures and techniques acceptable to the consumer? If the consumers support the treatment, they're more likely to use it. And lastly, is the magnitude of the outcome socially important? It doesn't make a difference to the consumer if the behavior change doesn't change their life for the better long term and isn't socially meaningful to their life. Hello, my name is
McLean's research found that a common frustration within interdisciplinary teams was the attitudes of each group towards the other groups. The views each group held of the other groups proved to be a barrier for multidisciplinary teams. Views were often developed with a lack of general understanding of the other discipline or when making comparisons between disciplines. This led to one discipline believing the other practices and frameworks to be inferior, inaccurate, and ineffective. The research states that stakeholders who dealt with challenging behaviors on a daily basis believed their frameworks were most effective. One stakeholder, foster parent, explained their view. Social workers come and go and all have different ideas. You have your foster care support agency worker telling you how to raise the child. You have your social worker telling you this and that, but you are living with the child all the time. Generally speaking, disciplines outside of behavior therapy are not trained how to handle challenging behaviors by utilizing reinforcement strategies, manipulating the environment, or strategies specific to the function of the behavior. This often leads behavior therapists to think other disciplines are not responding appropriately and potentially reinforcing the behavior. Another barrier to proper collaboration between disciplines is overlap of scope of competence. One example involves speech-language pathologists and behavior therapists. Both speech-language pathologists and behavior therapists might work on sound pairing. Each discipline likely approaches sound pairing in two different ways. The behavior therapist might try to work on sounds associated with things the child enjoys. The speech-language pathologist might work on sounds that are easiest to produce. Furthermore, the way the sound pairing is presented is likely to be different as well. Some solutions to this problem is frequent communication, delegation of target skills, and training. The team of various disciplines should be in frequent communication to update each other on goal progress, new behaviors, and new skills to target. In some cases, the team might need to agree that a skill should only be a focus of one discipline. In the example I gave before, maybe they decide only speech will work on sound pairing, while a behavior therapist works on functional communication with a picture exchange system. Disciplines outside of behavior therapy are not trained on how to respond to challenging behavior specific to the function of the behavior. This can lead to accidental reinforcement of the challenging behavior. For example, if a child engages in hitting others and the function is attention, if a therapist responds with "stop that," this would be reinforcing the behavior. Again, the best solution for this would be training and communication. The behavior therapist should communicate the behavior plan to all therapies so that everyone is responding the same way across environments. Overall, the root cause of many ineffective multidisciplinary teams is the lack of understanding and communication. Many children travel from therapy to therapy, meaning they are not all in the same building or within the same agency. This often leads to a lack of collaboration.
Another pro for collaborating with other professionals is that there are many similarities and common goals that we share. ASD affects many different areas of development like communication, cognitive impairments, motor, adaptive skills, and more. So that means that the need for multiple professionals should be involved for effective treatment to take place. Specifically, deficits in social communication are a core feature of ASD. Because of this, SLPs and behavioral analysts will find themselves targeting similar, if not the same, goals. SLPs also use some of the same strategies that are fundamental to ABA. As behavioral analysts, we utilize discrete trial training, which is similar to SLP's use of drill-based learning to target speech sounds. PRT is also used for SLPs, just under a different name, mute teaching. PECs being utilized as an augmentative and alternative communication system to teach functional communication are used by both SLPs and behavioral analysts. SLPs increase individuals with ASD social communication skills through working with other professionals, working with that individual by sharing their knowledge and expertise. Behavioral analysts help improve SLP's approach using reinforcement and other intervention strategies to better support the client. Recognition of the similarities between these two professionals is an important step in effective collaboration between professionals serving individuals with ASD. Working as a team offers opportunities to discuss common approaches and to share effective activities and strategies to target social and communication behaviors. For example, SLPs can assist the team in determining if the child's behavior is truly a function of the strength of the reinforcer, or if the child's receptive language skills or verbal working memory plays a role in their successful performance of the behavior. Additionally, collaborating among team members can help professionals identify motivating items and activities that they have found the individual enjoys and how it may be incorporated to fit the professional's goals. When implementing behavior plans, it's particularly important to ensure that the child is not reinforced for challenging behaviors and that the treatment is implemented with fidelity across different environments and people. If all adults and professionals working with a child are consistent in how they respond to specific challenging behaviors, then the behavior will likely decrease much quicker than the alternative. SLPs often lead the team in determining functional communication that is deemed appropriate to replace challenging behaviors that were previously serving as a communication function. This is why it is important to target and teach replacement for communication that is easier and works better for the child than the maladaptive behavior. Training other team members who are in other professions that work directly with the child is a great way to build understanding and enhance intervention effectiveness. Additionally, collaborating with other professionals who work with the child will prevent treatment satiation by targeting specific goals between disciples. Overall, each professional has a common goal in finding treatments and interventions that best support the needs of the client. Working together as a team-based approach can lead to improvement outcomes for the client. This visual supports Donaldson and Stamer's 2014 research article explaining the commonalities and differences between behavioral analysts and SLPs. It represents the different roles SLPs and BCBAs play when treating an individual and remaining within one's scope of competence and scope of practice, while also showing that these two fields also overlap and relate to each other to reach similar treatment goals.
Not all professionals share common goals, which could result in arguing over time. Therefore, a con to collaboration involves power imbalances between the individual stakeholders. We're going to focus specifically on negotiating power imbalances in regards to both the individual stakeholders as well as the children that are within the stakeholders' care. A study in 2012 was conducted by McLean, which interviewed 92 stakeholders. In these interviews, 100%, every single one of participants felt powerless and stated they needed to play into the system in order to create positive outcomes for their client. Power imbalances such as these makes it difficult to advocate and manage children's behavioral needs appropriately. Further, the interviews displayed different perspectives of power imbalances within the stakeholders. The majority stated that the presence of power imbalances included the person who's able to make the most decisions, who has the power to withdraw services, or even those who are able to physically restrain children. If a stakeholder was unable to meet at least one of these criteria, they deemed themselves powerless while they had to play along with the stakeholder in order to make those big decisions. Negotiating these power imbalances takes less resources away from the client and more resources towards those insignificant matters. Another type of power imbalance that occurs is through withholding of information. Another point made in the McLean 2012 study was how the majority of stakeholders that were interviewed ended up describing active withholding of client information at some point when they had the client. Other times, it was stated how information about a children's behavioral history was conveyed incorrectly. With some stakeholders withholding valuable information, you're not able to make those effective decisions. All information about the child is needed in order to provide the most effective treatment for their care. A residential care worker explained more on this topic, and they ended up saying, I would imagine that quite a few foster careers are actually deceived by not being told certain issues about the child. They want to place them, so they take them. I have no doubt about that. They're a bit deceitful about placements at times. People are failing to communicate in hopes of increasing chances of child placement. Rather than doing this, communication of this information will ultimately give someone a better understanding of one's behavior and allow it to create a more effective approach to managing it. Not all
My pro is multidisciplinary teamwork. Multidisciplinary work is when the members of a range of different professions contribute to the knowledge and the skills in a team effort to benefit those who use services, and is viewed as the cornerstone for collaboration, clinical judgment, and decision making in the many places of education, health, and social care. What this means is that when a client goes to school for the first time and going to the doctors or anytime that they need a little extra help, there will be a team of individuals that come together to help the client. This will help get rid of that one size fits all stereotype that happens with kids with autism, which is given to them by those who are not trained in this field. These teams are generally made to have a common aim to improve the quality of life trajectory for the individuals and for their families. The disciplines are a wealth of knowledge on a range of important target behaviors, such as um, families wanting to decrease maladaptive behaviors such as self injurious behavior, tantrum, elopement, um, screaming, things of that nature, or being able to increase social skills such as being able to play with others and sharing toys, being able to hold a conversation about how somebody's day was, and just being able to work together with other individuals. And they would also maybe like to increase life skills such as getting dressed in the morning for school, tying your shoes, brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, making your bed, folding clothes, hanging up clothes, things of these natures. This is actually something that is recommended by the National Institute for Clinical Excellence to be given a group of experts who make it their life's work to help a client in need, to advocate for them, and to help them be their best selves. But even though it is a very reasonable approach, it is still based on applications of behavior analysis. The teams can include educational, medical, allied health, and social care professionals, and that is just some of them, but not all. There are These are all necessary because one person can't be fully trained in all competencies. They have their own scope of practice that they stay in. Examples are for educators that can specialize in primary, secondary, high school, and special education. In medicine, they can specialize in general practices, cardiology, etc. Social workers can specialize in family and child care. Now, together, they represent their areas of expertise that aim for those in need of services, benefits that combine the knowledgeable areas. It is also to be noted that a board certified behavior analysis, or BCBA, is the main professional that is to supervise all programming, and funding can be denied if a BCBA is not in charge of the service user's programming. This visual goes along with the previous slide over the pros of multidisciplinary work, and it is called the 3 levels of facilitators for integrative multidisciplinary teamwork. This shares all the steps that it takes to have the experts get together and come up with a common goal for the clients and their families. The first level is the staff level, with mutual open mindedness, clear definitions of roles and expectations, joint delivery of treatment, interprofessional support, professional coexistence, and the culture of decision making. The next level is organization level, which is interprofessional workshops, prioritization of a team collaboration and support, and emotional support. And the last step would be, or last level would be policy making level, interprofessional education, funding for out of session practice, and flexibility in treatment choices and adaptation.
Although multidisciplinary teamwork is important for idea collaboration, sometimes there's not enough resources to go around. There are prominent issues related to resource allocation and how these ultimately impact the collaboration of practice. First, we're going to focus on the allocation of physical resources. Going back to the McLean stakeholder interview, 100% of the 92 stakeholders reported that resourcing issues impact collaborative practice negatively. It was stated how insufficient resources available did not effectively support the client's behavior change. In the instances when the resources were available, they were not allocated appropriately and didn't meet the needs of the children. Referring to the power imbalances mentioned earlier, many resources were inappropriately designed, they were time limited, and they could be discontinued by others without any justification needed. So not only do the companies not have the financial capacity to give the requested resources for each stakeholder, but the resources provided were not effective to collaborate with each other. The next resource that has inappropriate allocation is staff. The lack of staff resources primarily contribute to the configuration of turnover for staff. If you don't have enough staff, you're not able to effectively support children. This results into multiple problems such as communication, changes within behavior management plans, and no connections between each of the clients and their caregivers. Each stakeholder will not be able to effectively collaborate with staff if there's not reoccurring people to talk with, ultimately limiting collaboration of care. Lastly, there is a lack of time resources. Majority of the stakeholders interviewed with McLean in 2012 reported that time restraints resulted in negative collaboration of care. Not having enough time with your clients results in feelings of dissatisfaction and lack of connection, which will ultimately result in a lack of understanding of the child's behavior. With time resources not allocated properly, one stakeholder will have more success than the other, and then it turns into a power imbalance. This results in ineffective care of collaboration as a whole.
So, in conclusion, for the pros, the potential positives that we identified when collaborating with other professionals include well rounded treatments for clients, having similarities and common goals with other specialties, and multidisciplinary teamwork. Additional aspects that are beneficial for both clients and behavior analysis when working with other professionals include improve quality of life for clients, honoring the ethical code by working within their scope of practice, similar practice goals such as targeting functional communication, etc. Generally speaking, there are multiple possible benefits to behavior analysis working with other professionals in order to better serve their clients. It's important to be aware of these potential benefits and negatives when deciding the course of treatment for your client as well.
In conclusion, the potential negatives that we identified when collaborating with other professionals include power imbalances, inappropriate allocation of resources, differing knowledge and attitudes, and frameworks for practice. These points are further broken down to include struggles such as withholding information from other professionals, lack of staff resources, differences in terminology, etc. Overall, there are many possible obstacles that behavior analysts may encounter when collaborating with other professionals. Knowing these potential barriers prior to collaborating with other professionals could better prepare the behavior analyst and potentially avoid struggles and strains while working together.
The visual that's demonstrated on this slide shows the solutions or what needs to happen in order for interprofessional collaboration to occur correctly. So the first one focuses on values and ethics. For this one, behavior analysts have an ethical duty to work together with others in the best of the interest of their clients. They establish shared values and respect diversity of thought. Next, it's essential that we have communication. Behavior analysts demonstrate respect and professionalism through oral and written communication with others and about others. They strive to be active and empathetic listeners. It's important and essential to have communication in order to have nice collaboration between different stakeholders. Next is going to be roles and responsibilities. Behavior analysts acknowledge their own and others' roles and responsibilities, which includes being candid about their limitations. They know and do not overstep their scope of practice. They need to make sure they're not battling power struggles between each other. So they need to be able to understand their role and then have others take over when needed and them to take over as needed as well. Lastly is going to be teams and teamwork. Behavior analysts apply an evidence-based practice framework to make team decisions. They work with other team members to joint goals and make compromises when necessary in spirit of integrating care for clients. So we need to be able to compromise when needed and to have that teamwork fluent between all of the stakeholders. Otherwise, collaboration and practice isn't going to be able to occur. When working to support a client and involving multiple specialties to collaborate, it's important to remain professional. It's vital that we keep in mind that the way we interact with the client's team could impact their overall treatment. No matter how we feel of the opinions we have in an individual, they're not who we are there to serve. We're there to advocate for the best treatment for our client. This visual reminds us of the components to successfully working with multiple professionals. We must demonstrate respect. We must communicate effectively. We need to clearly define the roles of working together, including any limitations we may face, as well as keeping in mind the importance of ethical practice and teamwork. If we're successful in doing this, the client will benefit greatly and the quality of their treatment will ultimately improve, helping the interest in our client.